Hello movie lovers, how are you? Still with me, Brian. Now I will present a summary of the movie entitled The Gangster, the Cop, the Devil, which was released in 2019. This movie will tell about the most feared gangster boss who received an unexpected attack from a serial killer psychopath. The gangster boss, who doesn't want his reputation to be destroyed, decides to work with a policeman who also has the ambition to catch the serial killer. The two men then gather their strength to catch the serial killer. Okay, so as not to get more curious, let's go to the movie. At the beginning of the movie, we will be shown a mysterious man driving a car who is observing the surroundings. He then follows a car and crashes into it from behind. Yes, you must have guessed it, this man is a serial killer, or let's just call him the Killer Man. Whatever his purpose, he doesn't hesitate to kill his victims sadistically without feeling the slightest guilt, or what we usually know as a psychopath.
보험사면 사진이 제일 중요해요. 제대로 났네.
The next day was shown a whiz cop who was on duty. His name was Young Tae-suk. This was the guy. Young Tae is a captain in his team who was assigned to handle local criminal cases. That morning Young Tae is investigating a gambling fraud case belonging to one of the gangsters in that place. Moving on to our second whiz, the scene shows a gangster boss who is practicing boxing using his business opponent. He is the most feared gangster boss named Jang Dong-soo. This is the person. This is proven by showing how much Dong-soo is respected by his men. After finishing arresting gambling officials, Young Tae received an order from the office to immediately go to the scene of the murder shown at the beginning of the movie. Upon arriving at the scene, Young Tae discovers interesting facts about the man-in-car murder case. He realizes that the car was hit from behind, causing damage to the bumper of the car, and that the victim died due to a knife stab in his body. These two facts too found with 3 different murder cases. At night, Dong-soo is shown negotiating with a gangster boss who is his business opponent. They discussed an agreement on the boundaries of their respective territories so that no more problems would arise, so that it would not interfere with the business they were running. After finishing the deliberations, Dong-soo decided to go home by driving his car without being escorted by his man. On the way, the vehicle he was driving was unexpectedly hit from behind by an unknown person. And you could have guessed the guy who hit Dong-soo's car just now. Well, it's none other than the Killer Man, the murderous psychopath. A fight ensues between Dong-soo and the Killer Man, but this time unlucky for him because he has chosen the wrong prey. The Killer Man doesn't know that what he is facing now is a tough gangster boss.
네, 괜찮습니다.
The fight ended with both of them getting injured, and the Killer Man, who decided to run away because he chose the wrong opponent and the stab wound he received. Dong-soo, who was found injured and unconscious, was immediately taken to the hospital. From that incident, Dong-soo's men immediately counterattacked the opposing gangsters. They thought their boss had been attacked by enemy gangsters. Back to Killer Man, after finishing treating his wound, he then takes vent on his failure to kill Dong-soo by killing an innocent old man again. A few days later, Dong-soo, who had regained consciousness, was visited by police. Young Tae to be questioned about the accident he had, but because of his pride as a gangster boss, Dong-soo felt embarrassed if he had to tell the truth. he said the wound he got was from falling from a car. Dissatisfied with the information he got, Young Tae then checks Dong-soo's car that he was driving on the night of the incident. Young Tae again finds traces of a crash from behind the car. From the facts that he has found are the same as the previous murder cases, Young Tae concludes that this case is an attempted serial murder. After arriving at the office, Young Tae then conveys his findings to the police chief. Young Tae also has the ambition to be able to catch the perpetrators of this serial killer. But it was the chief of police who did not want to be bothered. He says he doesn't believe it and asks Young Tae to go out of his office. Unwilling to let it go, Young Tae then returns to see Dong-soo to ask him to cooperate in catching the killer since he already knows what happened. After negotiating and not wanting his big name and reputation to be destroyed, Dong-soo finally agreed to work with police. Young Tae, they both agreed who caught the killer man first. He is the one who has the right to judge him. Young Tae will imprison him and put him on trial by law, while Dong-soo will avenge him and kill the killer man. They work together, share clues and carry out investigations to uncover who the killer man is. But as a gangster, Dong-soo doesn't waste an opportunity like this. He uses it to get rid of his opponent's gangster boss. He ordered his men to scapegoat the killer man by killing his opponent's gangster boss using the knife belonging to the killer man they had found.
범행 도구를 보란 듯이 두고 왔네.
Young Tae, who has seen the news, looks very angry because he realizes that it was Dong-soo who took advantage of this situation to get rid of his gangster opponent. Young Tae, who is emotional and even challenges Dong-soo to fight, but of course, Young Tae is not a match for Dong-soo. That night when Dong-soo goes to the funeral home to attend the funeral, the killer man sneaks into the middle of the gathering without anyone noticing. The killer man then gives a paper to incite the gangster boss's assistant that says someone used my knife while looking at Dong-soo. After returning from the funeral home, the killer man did not stop to continue looking for prey. He then killed someone on the street with the motive he often used. Long story short, when police Young Tae and gangster boss Dong-soo search for clues in the killer man's car they secured. Suddenly the two of them got an unexpected attack from the opposing gangsters led by the assistant who wanted revenge. They all succeeded in being pitted by the killer man. But the assistant and his men who failed to take revenge had to accept defeat and died as a result of their fight against Dong-soo and Young Tae. In the afternoon, when he returned to the office, Young Tae again became tense with his superiors because the investigation case had been taken over by the Korean Federal Investigation Police. A few days later, Young Tae is still working hard to catch the killer man. Currently, he is using the victim's wife to lure him out. While reconnaissance took place, Young Tae met directly with the man he suspected was the killer man. Young Tae and his men then tried to chase and catch the man. But in pursuit, they lost track and failed to catch the man. 2 days later, after carrying out a forensic examination of all the clues and fingerprints found on the killer man's car, an identity named Kang Kyung-ho emerged, who was suspected of being the killer man. From this information, Young Tae immediately went to the house where Kang Kyung-ho used to live, where he found a room that had been abandoned for a long time. Just information from the description of a neighbor, a fact was found about the figure of Kyung-ho, who is known as a friendly, polite, kind person and a devout believer in religion. While inside, Young Tae finds a family photo in which Kang Kyung-ho is seen with a woman and two daughters. After matching, it turns out that Kyung-ho's photo is the same as the sketch of the killer man's face that Dong-soo gave to Young Tae. After getting the true identity of the devil man, it didn't take long for Dong-soo and Young Tae to immediately hold a meeting and gather their men to unite all the forces between the gangsters and the police to jointly catch Kyung-ho.
이 새끼를 무조건 잡는다. 새끼랑 비슷한 놈이라도 봤다. 하게 보고한다.
They work together to find Kyung-ho located, starting from rented houses, markets, hotels, cafes, gambling places, and to public baths. After searching for several days, unfortunately, they still couldn't find a clue where Kyung-ho was. In the middle of that search, in the afternoon when it was raining, Dong-soo was waiting by the roadside. He met a girl who was coming home from school and was about to wait for the bus to come. And it turns out, behind the figure of a gangster who looks cruel and dangerous, Dong-soo is still willing to get caught in the rain and is kind enough to give his umbrella to a schoolgirl who was in the rain.
무거워. 괜찮아요.
가져가.
네.
야, 장동수.
After the bus came without them noticing, it turned out that Kyung-ho was also on the bus that the schoolgirl who was going home was riding. In the evening, after a day of searching without results, those who were taking a break saw a news broadcast on TV that there had been a sadistic murder case that befell a schoolgirl who was about to return home. Dong-soo, who saw the umbrella he gave him that afternoon at the schoolgirl murder site, immediately realized that this case was the work of Kyung-ho. Not wanting to waste time, they all immediately moved toward the area around the murder to immediately catch Kyung-ho. After scattering to get the location where Kyung-ho lives, Young Tae, Dong-soo, and their assistants surround the street where Kyung-ho will pass so they can't escape again. Feeling that he was being targeted and surrounded, Kyung-ho immediately fled in his car. The chase continues by running through narrow alleys, but bad luck must befall the assistant when in search he is stabbed by Kyung-ho. Dong-soo, who arrived late, found the assistant seriously injured. He didn't want to be sad because his favorite assistant was dying. Dong-soo was asked by the assistant to immediately catch and take revenge on Kyung-ho. With his instincts as a gangster boss, Dong-soo finds Kang Kyung-ho hiding in the karaoke room's toilet. Can't wait to beat Kyung-ho, Dong-soo immediately smashes the toilet door so that he is on top of Kyung-ho. Dong-soo then uses his death punch to knock him unconscious. After successfully capturing this Kyung-ho, Dong-soo immediately took him to then vent his anger and avenge him for so long. However, after receiving a lot of torture and threats that he would be killed immediately, it was incredible Kyung-ho did not feel the slightest fear, panic, or pain. In fact, he can still smile as if nothing happened. It seems that such a thing has become a basic trait for a cold-blooded psychopath. When Dong-soo runs out of patience and is about to kill him suddenly,
바로 지금이야. 왜 죽여? 죽이라고!
지랄하고 피팅 있더니.
unexpectedly Young Tae comes to stop Dong-soo's actions. As a law enforcement policeman, he will act and prosecute Kyung-ho according to procedures and applicable law. After being caught, you will be irritated by showing the Kyung-ho or killer man who can sit quietly in a clean place and is eating well after committing many heinous crimes and very sadistic murders. Sometime later, after recovering from treatment, Kyung-ho had to be interrogated by the police so that he would admit all his crimes. But unfortunately, the results of the interrogation stated that without the confession of the perpetrators of the crime and complete and incriminating evidence and the absence of witnesses, it is very likely that Kyung-ho can still be free in the trial later. When the trial day arrived, the trial was quite difficult, because there was no complete evidence or witnesses against from a legal perspective. Moreover, Kyung-ho can confidently put forward an alibi or defense that can free him from the law. This statement is also supported by the defense of a lawyer who doesn't know what he is thinking, so that he stupidly wants to defend his client, who logically is a murderous psychopath. However, the situation immediately reversed when the judge asked the prosecutor from the police to bring in the only witness or victim who survived the attack by Kyung-ho. He is Jang Dong-soo, the boss of the most feared gangster in this area. Secretly, it turns out that policeman Young-tae has negotiated with Dong-soo to turn himself in to testify before a judge. In his testimony, as a victim, Dong-soo told a chronology of events and presented strong evidence for the crimes of Kyung-ho, who had tried to kill him. After listening to Dong-soo's testimony and looking at the solid evidence, the chief judge firmly decides that the serial killer is Kang Kyung-ho, or what we call the Killer Man. Finally, Kyung-ho got the death penalty and had to languish in prison until the day of execution arrived. However, it was unexpected that Dong-soo, who was also convicted, was guilty of his illegal gambling case and had to be sentenced to prison. It turns out that Dong-soo had previously made a deal with policeman Young-tae so that he would surrender and testify, and instead he would be placed in the same prison as Kyung-ho in prison. Overall, this movie is quite exciting, with the theme of the story of a gangster who works with a police officer to catch the same enemy or criminal, making this movie unusual and interesting. And also the acting of good movie actors makes this movie fun to watch, especially after watching an action-themed movie like this can awaken the adrenaline that has been hidden in me for a long time. The message we can take from this movie is never to look at someone from their appearance. Sometimes people who look bad are good people, and sometimes people who look good are bad people, or maybe psychopaths. Remember that evil comes not because of opportunity, revenge, or desire, but evil comes from the human heart, which has been dirty for a long time. That's the point. I hope that wherever movie lovers are, they will stay healthy and make it easier for them to carry out their activities. I'm Brian, stay safe everyone, and see you in the next video.